Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel Roberts, and today we'll be discussing the SDK in technical writing or software development kit. So, first of all, I'm sorry for the background noise, which is the annoying dog in our neighborhood. But yeah, so I hope you hear this recording loud and clear. Hear my voice. Now, allow me to share my screen. Here it is. Here. Okay. It and there. So software development kit by Ricky Mill Roberts, of course. Now, SDK is a ready-made kit with tools and instructions that helps developers build app for a specific platform like phones or computers quickly and easily. So instead of building everything from the ground up, developers can use pre-built components and follow structural instructions provided by the SDK. Additionally, an SDK allows applications to integrate with essential services like mapping, payment systems, or authentication, streamlining the development process without requiring developers to program these features from scratch. Now, please bear with me, guys, as we'll be discussing somehow a complicated topic because it includes codings and such, which is really not my forte. Now, SDK typically includes number one, application programming interfaces or APIs. So, is API is like a messenger that allows different apps or software to talk to each other and share information. APAs provide a set of rules and functions that apps follow to request and receive data from the system. It's like retrieving weather updates, processing the payments, or displaying maps and app. This allows developers to add features without building everything from scratch. So APA is just like a um built-in protocol that enables applications to communicate with software and platform. For example, client application. Then it requests APA requests it, goes to server database, then the API server database, then goes to API response, which um answers the application of a client. I hope you understand the cycle of client, then the API requests it, then it goes to the server or database, then the response of the API, then it goes to back to the application of the client. Now the code libraries. So what is code libraries? So code libraries are collections of pre-written code that developers can use to platform common tasks without writing everything from scratch. So instead of writing code for common tasks from scratch, developers can import and use these libraries to handle functionalities like data processing, user authentication, or graphical rendering. So this not only speeds up development but also ensures consistency and reliability as these libraries are often tested and optimized for performance. So code libraries are just like built-in codes that you don't need to write code manually or from scratch, but instead you already have like pre-made code for your requests. For example, you want to develop an app like for example for music, then there are already pre-made codes for you to use. Then it also have development tools. These are essential software that assist developers in coding, testing, and debugging applications. These include compilers which translates code into machine language, debuggers which identify and fix errors, and emulators which simulate devices for testing. Examples includes GCC, GDB, and Android emulator ensuring efficient and reliable software development. So when we talk about development tools, they're just like the OS or the operating system. Example, we have for our phones, we have Android operating system. We also have iPhone operating system. We have the JavaScript and such. For example, we have here the Vagrant, the Jenkins, the Docker, and so on and so forth. Next is documentations. When we talk about documentation, this refers to the manuals, tutorials, and reference guides that provide detailed instructions on using a software development kit or SDK. So it helps developers to understand the tools, functions, and best practices within the SDK. Well-structured documentation ensures smooth development by offering code examples, troubleshooting tips, and implementing guidelines. Now, sample code. Sample code consists of pre-written examples that demonstrates how to use an SDK features correctly. So these code snippets help developers understand the implementation, saving time and reducing errors. So they serve as practical references showing best practices for integrating functionalities like authentication, data retrieval, or API calls within an application. And lastly, we have the testing and debugging tools. These help developers to ensure that application functions correctly by identifying and fixing errors. Testing tools simulate user actions to check for issues, while debugging tools locate the correct encoding mistakes. Examples include Postman for API testing, JUnit for code validation, and GDB for debugging, ensuring a software reliability. So those are just what SDK has inside its software development kit. Now, why is SDK important? Efficiency, they provide pre-built functionalities or they improve the efficiency by providing pre-built functionalities such as ready-made code libraries and tools, and this reduces the need for developers to write repetitive code from scratch, and it speeds up development process. Then the consistency. SDK ensures consistency in application by following standardized guidelines and structures. So this helps developers create apps that work smoothly across a particular platform. Security. SDKs enhance applications security by providing built-in protocols, just like what I've said earlier, that protect data and prevent unauthorized access. Integration. SDK simply simplify the integration of external services such as payment, gateways, mapping tools, and third-party APIs. So instead of building these connections from scratch, developers can use SDKs to quickly, seamlessly add features and online payments. Lastly, we have optimization, where SDK helps developers enhance applications performance by providing tools and resources that take advantage of platform-specific features. Those are the importance of SDK. Again, if you ask what is SDK, SDK is a pre-built components and follow instructions provided. So SDK is just like a ready-made or a kit for developers to help in making or provide or developing a software. Just like they're just like instructional tools if you need to make a software or develop a software. Now let's proceed to the main game or really the focus here is the software development kit and technical writing. So a software development kit includes clear, concise, and well-structured documentation to help developers understand and use its features effectively. When we talk about documentation, again, documentation is the manuals or tutorials or reference guides that provide detailed instructions. So, good documentation provides step-by-step guides, codes examples, API references, and troubleshooting tips. So, it ensures smooth integration and reduces development time and enhances the overall usability of the SDK. Now, overview. So, introduction to the SD. So, we have here the overview documentation of the SDK. So, um, this section introduces, we have here the parts of the SDK, right? For overview documentation, we have this section introduces the SDK, explaining what it does and why developers should use it. Example, introductions. It has introduction, a brief explanation of the SDK. So we have the key features. It lists the main functionality such as API integration, security protocol, or performance optimization. Also have the system requirements that specifies the necessary operating systems, programming languages, and dependencies needed for the SDK to work properly. Also have the installation guide. So this section provides a step-by-step instructions to help developers set up the SDK correctly. So it covers setup process, a detailed guide on downloading, installing, and configuring the SDK. Also have required tools and environment. It is a list of necessary software such as compilers, IDEs, or additional libraries. Now we have the troubleshooting installation issues. It offers solutions for common problems such as missing dependencies or incorrect configurations. Then the API reference. So this is a technical guide explaining how to use SDK functions and components. It includes class and function descriptions, defines how each function, method, and parameter works. Usage examples, provide sample code or show how a function is used in real scenarios. Error codes, which list possible errors and their meanings to help developers debug issues quickly. Now, the code samples and tutorials offers hands-on learning materials to help developers understand how to implement the SDK in their project. It includes practical examples or ready-to-use code snippets that demonstrate common SDK tasks, step-by-step tutorials, and the best practices or tips on writing efficient, secure, and optimized code when using the SDK. Now, the use and cases scenario, this section explains how SDK can be applied in real-world projects. It has industry applications, describe how different sectors such as e-commerce, healthcare, or gaming can benefit from SDK. Excuse me. Also, project-specific use cases, samples of how developers might use SDK in mobile apps, websites, or enterprise software. Also have performance considerations and limitation that notes any limitations such as scalability issues or platform restrictions. Also have the troubleshooting and facts or frequently asked questions. So this section helps developers to resolve common issues without external assistance. It includes common errors and fixes, debugging tips, and FAQs or frequently asked question that answers frequently asked questions, helping users to solve problems quickly. Now we have also the versioning and release notes. So this section keeps developers informed about SDK updates and new changes. It includes new features and fixes, deprecated features, and compatibility informations. A best practice for SDK documentation. To ensure clarity and usability, SDK documentation should use simple and precise language. Sorry, it's covering the here. Use precise language to avoid confusion. Avoid technical jargons when possible to make it easy for all developers to understand. Include code snippets. Provide short, clear examples that can be easily copied and tested. Maintain consistency. Keep formatting terminology and structure uniform across all nations. Use visual aids. Diagrams, flowcharts, and screenshots help explain complex concepts. Keep documentation updated. Regularly revise the content to reflect SDK updates and changes. Now, we'll proceed an example of an SDK here. Click the link, and I hope you can see this screen, right? So here's an example of SDK. Um, Instructional manual, copyright by Campbell Scientific Inc. So here, CSI software development kit. So technical writing and software development kits is designed for clarity. So again, wait, it's designed for clarity, precision, and usability. So CSI SDK Beginner's Guide follows a structured approach ensuring developers can quickly understand and apply the information. So below, I'll break down the technical writing structure of each section and the best practices that should be considered when writing an SDK guide. So it starts with table of contents with introduction, Loggernet SDK, server, PC 900, BM5 Direct SDK. So in the introduction, so it begins with background information and date about data loggers and functionalities. Here, the background, Campbell network. Then it defines the purpose of an SDK. Defines a purpose SDK and its role in simplifying communication between software applications and data loggers. You can see here, um, the you can see the benefits or the advantage in using an SDK. Then, wait, I'm sorry. Then it provides a high-level overview of the available SDKs, listing different sources and use cases. So here we can also see the um, comparison table that visually summarizes SDK features. So here they include visual aids to in order to easily understand um, the SDK. For example, we have Loggernet SDK controls, that and such. Then they also have the overview. Campbell offers several SDK products, current SDK. Now, in the introduction, we can see here that it defined the audience. So clearly state who the SDK is for. For example, software developers or engineers. And also it provides an overview first. Developers need to a roadmap before diving into details. It used lists and tables to summarize differences in SDK effectively here. Summarize the tables and the lists, summarizing. And it also avoids technical or unnecessary jargons. It stick to essential technical terms while keeping description available. Example, developers in custom SDK, intermediate role. As you can see, it avoids too much jargon as it would confuse people. Now let's proceed in its Loggernet server. Wait, here, SDK. So here, overview of Loggernet as a client server system. So here, it has a description of SDK also components and overview of SDK. So the software development kits contains 6 ActiveX controls and a limited version of a Loggernet server. Development can use this SDK to create application that remotely access an existing Loggernet server. However, the included Loggernet server direct DLL can only access only. So as you can see here, before use in the second paragraph, before using this jargon, the Coral IB3D DDL, it had it in the first paragraph, it gives the meaning of it first. For example, Loggernet server DLL. Right? There. Then software requirements, it lists mandatory tools and compatibilities, controls and uses, and also it has a step-by-step installation instructions. example, it including how to register SDK controls and how to integrate them into Visual Basics. Well, SDK controls, how to register. You will find SDK in not control bearing, how to access controls, and it has visual aids to help you be guided and where are you clicking. Here we also have the table and the arrows and such. Then it makes easy to locate relevant features for so SDK doesn't only include words, it also has features for you to be sure and on where is it located. For example, where do I click this? Where do I find this one when clicking this one? So you are now ready to start developing this. So in its best practices, it used modular sections. It also provide clear installation steps. It used tables to describe functions, and it explicit with names and paths. It's explicit. It doesn't give you a hard time in following where is the SDK, CS source and such. Then here in the LoggerNet server SDK, it mirrors the LoggerNet structure but introduces another functionalities like remote connections. Here, then it highlights difference between LoggerNet SDK and LoggerNet server SDK in terms of features. So here, LoggerNet controls implies somewhere then LoggerNet server SDK, and it gives differences of LoggerNet SDK and LoggerNet server SDK. Also, it provides a second table outlining the LoggerNet server SDK controls. Here, it really divides the servers into its specific and particular usage in order to avoid confusion. So it highlights key differences between SDKs. It uses parallel structures across sections, so keeps consistency, explaining multiple SDKs. It includes relevant comparisons and describe networking in simple terms. Yes, here requirements, logger definition. So it avoids using very technical terms. It use technical terms since it's also needed in the SDK, but it really has easy words in order for us easily understand. Doesn't use highfalutin words. For example, how SDK controls. Then we have the DLLs. Then also explains we have the DLLs while also explain what's the meaning of DLLs. We have dynamical libraries. Then as examples. So before using the jargons, it gives you the definition first. We have the images, such. Now we go to PC 9000 SDK. Still as the overview, begin with a narrow focus and PC9 in order for us to avoid confusion. It also describes DLL usage. You can see here before it's being placed in the directory and such. Then it explains how to call DLL functions. So overall, because it has the same structures, overall, the SDK has consistent structures across SDK sections. It starts with the overview, then the list of the use of tables and list to organize informations. We have the differences, uses concise words. It avoids using too much jargon as much as possible. Such this SDK is consistent in structure. It also has tables and lists. It has step-by-step instructions. It has code examples and precise terminology without unnecessary complexity. So by following these technical writing principles, The CSI SDK Beginner's Guide ensures that software developers can effectively use the SDK to integrate with Campbell Scientific Data Logger. So that's all. So SDK really has a certain structure where in order to avoid confusion to the readers, especially to the first timer in using SDK. So once again, my name is Gabriel M. Roberts, and I hope you understand this lesson, even though it's really technical and it has a lot of terminologies. And I know software development kit is really not too easy to understand, especially for us or for me, with um computer things is really not my forte. Thank you, and this is my reference. Once again, my name is Gabriel M. Roberts. Thank you. Bye bye.